Hello, and welcome to Around the Verse, our weekly in-depth look at the development of Star Citizen. I'm Sandy Gardner, and joining us back in the studio today is Game Director Chris Roberts. Did you have a productive time overseas?
Yes, I did. I'm glad to be back. Weather's a little nicer here, but it was a great trip. I spent some time with both the UK and Frankfurt teams and pushed ahead on some of the new systems coming online as we continue towards the release of Alpha 3.0 and Squadron 42. These systems are going to go a long way to support Star Citizen's vast map size and huge array of play options. We'll be showing off a few highlights when we check in with the studios during the up-and-coming weekly ATV updates over the next few months.
Now, you didn't mention the best part I saw from last week's newsletter, that you got to judge a bake-off.
Yeah, it was actually quite good. A big sugar rush, but it was the very first Foundry 42 cake bake-off. The entries we got were spectacular. I'm not sure I got that much work done later in the afternoon, but you know, well done to everyone there. I didn't know we had that much baking talent in our UK office.
There you go. The January monthly report was posted to the website last Friday and has a ton of information about all the progress that was made on Star Citizen and Squadron 42 heading into the release of the Alpha 2.6.1 patch.
Yep, and thanks to all the Evocati subscribers and backers who have been testing the new mega map and multi-regional servers. The patch is expected to go live in the next few days, so watch out for that.
With the new patch out, we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to get some new ships as well. So we were having our first ever Valentine's Day sale right now. Aww, sweet.
So on top of that, we're having a Valentine's free fly event through Sunday, where you can check out one of our multi-crew ships, the Constellation, which is the granddaddy of multi-crew ships in the game. So make sure to tell your loved ones and visit the site for more details.
Along with 2.6.1, we're also launching our new chat and forum service, Spectrum, to the main site for everyone.
Yeah, this new service brings some impressive communication features, which should make it even easier for backers and devs alike to share ideas and interact. I'm really excited by Spectrum, so there we go.
Now it's time for the weekly studio update, so let's check in with the UK office to find out the latest developments from the Foundry 42 team.
Hello and welcome back to Foundry 42 in the UK for our studio update. I'm lead designer Phil Meller.
I'm QA tester Mickey Oliver.
Our team here in Wilmslow continues to grow and we now have over 200 staff here. And while the team comprises nearly every aspect that goes into making Star Citizen and Squadron 42, here are some of the highlights of what the team has been working on lately.
Our props team have a few components and ship parts to show us, including a shield generator, a storage console and a mining module.
So our VFX team have been having fun blowing up ships again. So yeah, some people get all the fun. And another example of the amount of detail that goes into our level environments is this in-fiction magazine cover from our UI team.
As the game expands and becomes more complicated, our design team used some awesome internal tools, such as this map of the Stanton system. We thought you might like it, so let's take a look.
The artists are always adding detail and character to all areas, such as asteroids, nebulas, modular satellites and stations.
So there's a look at some of the things we've been working on.
And now, back over to your host.
Thanks for the update, Phil and Mickey. Fun to see that map sneak peek in there and some of the progress happening as we expand out the Stanton system for 3.0. I mean, there's going to be so many things and so many little areas and so much content. It's going to be pretty cool.
And that magazine cover was a great example of the lengths our artists and narrative team go to expand out the immersiveness of the game.
Yeah, especially with the new camera modes, allowing players to zoom in on the environment and take in all the little details. I'm always amazed by all the great shots that I see online that people post of their play sessions.
Coming up now, we have another edition of our ongoing series of Ship Shape.
Yes, this week we're going to take a comprehensive look at one of the ships that started it all, Anvil Aerospace's Super Hornet, and for 2.61 we have a new version of it, which partly we'll show in this little piece.
If there were a single signature Star Citizen ship, it would have to be the Anvil Hornet. The Hornet's namesake was the F-36 Hornet from the original Wing Commander.
For me, when I started to do Star Citizen, obviously all my past games are, loom large, and one of the inspirations, obviously, for Star Citizen and Squadron 42 was, my Wing Commander series, as well as Privateer and Freelancer, and so I felt like, well, let's start with an iconic fighter, and one of the most iconic fighters in Wing Commander was the Hornet, which was the light fighter that you started in, and the naming of the Hornet and quite a few other Wing Commander ships are always based on sort of historical precedent, because I took a lot from World War II or present day sort of aerospace and military fact. And so the Hornet was a light fighter in Wing Commander, and so when I started, on Star Citizen, I was like, okay, we need a ship. I need a ship to build that we can fly around, and I can sort of test out, all the different things in terms of, the flight model and how the look of it's going to be and how tactile and visceral it's going to feel. And so I thought, well, let's come up with a fighter craft and let's call it the Hornet, as a kind of nod to what I did in Wing Commander and a nod to sort of the historical ships, whether it's the F-18 Hornet of today or back in World War II days. And so that was essentially the inspiration. Originally, I'd given a brief to Rob McKinnon, who is the concept artist that designed the Hornet, and has worked on a whole bunch of stuff in Star Citizen. You sort of see a lot of his designs ultimately in the game. And I told him, well, it should be a light fighter, and he'd come back with this really cool design, but he'd sort of gunned it up. He'd put this big bull turret in the top and guns on the front with a canard turret, and it was super heavily armed. It wasn't really a light fighter, and but I liked the design so much that I was like, okay, well, you know what? Doesn't need to be a light fighter. This can be a medium or a heavy fighter, and we'll call it the Hornet, and it'll be sort of the base standard fighter for the UE Navy, which was the fiction that me and Dave Haddock had come up for the universe, and who you would fight on the side of in Squadron 42.
The idea was that it was originally released in 2806. It was a replacement frontline kind of carrier dogfighter. Sort of the idea was that the Avenger used to be sort of their sort of premier dogfighter, and then the Hornet came out and just kind of blew them out of the water and sort of became the ubiquitous ship of the UE Navy.
Once I had the design, I handed over the design of that, Ryan Church's design of the Bengal carrier, and also of the Vandal side, which was done by Jim Martin. They were all handed to CG Bot when I was doing my early tech demo and prototyping of what eventually became what I showed, and the little movie we put together that Hannes put the 5-minute cinematic together. And we handed it off to CG Bot because I didn't really have a team. It was a sort of loose affiliation of people helping me put this demo together. And Sergio Rosas, who used to work for me at Digital Anvil as an art director and Origin as art director, had an art company called CG Bot, which is mostly based in Monterrey, Mexico, and has some people in Austin, Texas. And he's like, oh, I've got some excess capacity. I'd love to help you out. And so we negotiated a very nice rate that he gave me, because obviously this was very speculative. And I said, okay, well, here's the things that we need to build. And I gave him the Vandal side, I gave him the Hornet, I gave him the Bengal carrier, and they also did characters. So they did the pilot character that you saw in the opening cinematic, and that you would also have sitting in the cockpit of the Hornet. And they also modeled an early version of a Vandal. And they built those, and then once I got those assets, I myself put them into the engine and was extending the engine to sort of handle assets of that detail and fidelity with the articulation and animation that I really wanted to see in the game. Because for me, this was about proof of concept and visualizing the feel, the tactile sense that I wanted the world of Star Citizen and the game itself to have. And I think it's one of the strengths that we have is that our ships feel very real. They feel like, you walk around them, you feel like you can get into the seat and all the switches and all the bits work and they feel proper. It's not just a cockpit that's put in front of your view, or it's not just an exterior view of a ship that the insides aren't really figured out. And so the Hornet was really the first one that did that and sort of showed what that could feel like. And I think that was one of the big reasons why people responded to it.
The first time when I got the Hornet in my lap was when we decided to do the first visual upgrade pass on it. It was already about 2 years old at that time, and then the decision was made. We had to upgrade it a little bit. What I mainly did was take the landing gear components and stuff like that and up-res those. I didn't do too much on the main ship at that point, the main hull, the wings, and all those things. The main features weren't upgraded that much at that point. Mainly the materials and sort of the attachments and stuff like that.
Back then, we didn't have a lot of the technology that we had now. We just had some asset that an artist made, and we had to somehow make it work. So we had a Chris Smith's beautiful Hornet, and then we'd had our hacked up versions over here. So we'd take his stuff, put it in, get it working how we wanted to, because we were still prototyping stuff. And so any one of us would be in that CGA mashing stuff together to get what we needed it to be so that we could go, all right, Chris Smith, this is how we want it. Take the beautiful Hornet and rearrange the hierarchy to how it should be. So one day we come in and then, we have guns attached. And then the next day we changed the whole hierarchy and it would stop working. And then the following day, we got the parts breaking off, and then we would have to redo parts of the iron port system so we could get the hierarchy changes there. So then, maybe the next week, we'd get the damage working and the hierarchy working, so you could blow parts off, but now you can't shoot. So it was kind of that iterative process. And then once, it took about a month to get everything there. It was a little bit buggy, but it was hey, this is working. This is pretty cool.
Obviously, after we'd shown it in the 2012 sort of demo prototype, the hangar module was the first time that people actually would up close get to see it. Now we'd worked pretty hard to get all the base ships like the Aurora and 300i and obviously the Hornet into the hangar module, which we debuted at Gamescom back in 2013, which was actually a pretty cool moment. And then not that long after that, we debuted a commercial for the Hornet, which Hannes had put together, which is still one of our cooler commercials. And it's a Hornet pilot being chased by various ships, an Aurora, 300i, and then he comes back home, and then you reveal that he's bringing ice cream back for his significant other. So it was really kind of fun. And then we sort of had this idea, and I think this was one of the the very early cases of coming up with this idea of variants, where we would have specialty versions of the ship. So there was a tracker or a ghost. So the ghost was the stealth version, and tracker was sort of the AWACS version. And then the Super Hornet was sort of that was the version of the F-18 Super Hornet that you have today, where it's two-seater, you've got a Rico in the back, maybe that person controls the gimbal turret or could control missile targeting, and that certainly is going to become a much cooler role as Item 2.0 comes out on the newer stuff. But we did, that was the next sort of update of the Hornet, and Chris Smith sort of had taken the base Hornet and was working in these new variants that we'd done designs and sketches on. CGBot helped out a little bit to add parts of it, like the dome on the tracker and stuff like that. And so we updated it for 2013 and the hangar module, and then subsequent to that, we started to roll out PBR, physically based rendering, which is a whole different, which is what the engine uses now and has been using for a couple of years. But it's a way that the materials look much better, much more realistic reaction to light. So metal really reacts like metal, wood reacts like wood, concrete reacts like concrete. So Chris had then took the Hornet and did a pass to bring up the materials to the sort of PBR level, and it sort of stayed at that point until recently, when he took a pass to take all our Hornets, starting with the F7C and then the Tracker and the Ghost, and now with 261 will be the Super Hornet, to our new level of modeling with custom normals and POM mapping and UV2s and the special damage shader that we have.
After that first upgrade pass, the ship pretty much remained unchanged. Aside from the PBR upgrade when we got that online, and then it was decided that we do like another version of the ship, like the new 2018 BMW. It was supposed to be like the next generation ship, which was the S7A. And lucky for me, I was tasked with doing that. And it was, it was great. It was fun, since I've been involved with the Hornet for so long, it made sense, so I knew a lot about the ship already. I was very familiar with it. So yeah, I took on the S7A, and I sort of designed it from the ground up, that one, and kind of, decided, all the things that bothered me on the original Hornet, I sort of wanted to fix on this new one. So that's what I did. So after the F7A, the Mark II was completed, I moved right on to upgrading the Mark I Hornet yet again. But this time it was a full upgrade. It wasn't just upgrading pieces here and there. It was sort of rebuilding the whole ship with smart normals and the proper material PBR values and everything. And so, so it could hold up with all the other ships that we've been coming out with for the last year and a half. Since I had done the upgrade to the base Mark I Hornet, they all share parts, so the change actually affects all the variances of it automatically, which is great. It saves us time because it reuses the wing and the cockpit and everything like that. All that was needed was just some material tweaks on the colors and stuff like that. And then after that was the Super Hornet. And the Super Hornet was a little bit of a special case because A, it's a two-seater, and B, a lot of the parts aren't directly shared with the original Hornet. There's some tweaks and additions to the Super Hornet that the original base Hornet doesn't have.
We felt that the Hornet line was overdue for an update, and so we wanted to bring the Hornets up to the current standard of our latest batch of ships. We wanted to improve them both visually and technically. That did involve things like streamlining the design shape, taking a look at rebalancing the ships and changing their weapon loadout, for example, and their missile payload, and also figuring out whether the current setup for the interior of the cockpit was going to be useful for our future multi-crew and item manipulation gameplay that we're planning in the near future. In updating the damage tech on the ships so that they use our current UV2 damage so that they'll blow up really nicely.
The old damage system used to have 25, 75, 50, 100 states. You'd shoot the ship after a certain amount of health, does a model swap, 100% blows off. It was pretty cool damage, but it was very labor intensive. We'd actually have to do a lot of hand modeling. Each piece would end up looking fairly similar after a while.
If you picture my hand as the Hornet, a horribly drawn Hornet, like each of these fingers would be parts, and we should be able to shoot them and blow them off. In theory, it sounds like an easy peasy thing, but we had it much more complicated than that. You could blow off this part of the thumb, followed by this part, so I could shoot here and take the whole thing away, or shoot here and take the whole thing away.
When the new shader came along, basically now we just blow off huge chunks. So wing debris. And when I'm taking a ship and I'm blowing it apart, I'm saying to myself, which pieces detach from where? And I'm setting up the proxies, I'm setting up the shields, I'm making sure things still animate and detach. If there's like a turret or a gun under the wing, I have to make sure that the helpers are attached to that piece of geo so it goes flying off with the debris and the destruction.
It's basically applying this streamlined texture around the whole ship. And when you shoot it, we get these nice glow effects and decals that happen anywhere on the ship. And with that, we have this like underneath skeleton carriage, where if you shoot it so much, you'll actually start seeing the bare bones skeleton of the ship.
So now that I have pieces detaching, I have basic shader damage, I also need to go in and make sure that there are effects set up. Those basically represent a bunch of little cubes in Max, and they're all floating around, and I kind of see them like C4 charges, right? They explode, and then you get the UV2 damage, so there's burn and there's wear on all the pieces that are exploded and melting. And once those detach, it creates more randomized damage, right? So I can kind of hand place squibs. So even though, say, 2 wings detach on the same spot, there's different charges in different spots, and it just looks more varied.
The main impact is going to be visual. You will see that the lines are a lot sexier. You'll see that when you die, the explosion is much more satisfying, and it doesn't feel as outdated as it used to.
It's really amazing to sort of see all these back to back if you look at, and there's quite a sort of difference in terms of detail and quality. And the amazing thing was back in 2012, I thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I don't think you could get something more detailed or cooler in a game back then. And I sort of look at how we move along every single year and how better we get. And I'm always in awe at the ability and the talent of our artists. And for us to build this world that feels that tactile with these ships that feel that real. They don't really feel like a fake or a digital ship. They feel like a real ship. And that's our goal, is to get you to lose yourself in the cockpit of one of these ships and fly in space and live that fantasy.
That really takes me back to when we were putting together the original demo for the Kickstarter. Do you remember that?
I do. I don't remember much sleep from it, but anyway, yeah, so much of Star Citizen's development history is represented in the tech and artistry that can be found in Super Hornet and the other Hornets. So to see where we started and where we are now makes me really proud and even more excited of where the project's going to go next.
Speaking of what's next, we've got a really interesting piece for this week's Deep Dive featurette, exploring some of the new server improvements that our engineers integrated into our network code for Alpha 2.6.1.
Yes, so have a look at how our new multi-regional server support and enhanced cloud architecture is allowing players to connect faster and easier no matter where they are in the world. And this will be something that we'll be continuing to work on and roll out to other regions as it beds in and works well.
Hey guys.
Hi, John.
John. I'm here with Mike Jones and Ahmed. Today we're going to talk about some of our server architecture in the cloud and some things that we've been working on from the operations and the DevOps side lately. Let's start off first by talking about what we have today. Like how most people don't know very much about what it takes to publish a game like Star Citizen. We're in an alpha phase now, and the game is available to anybody who's a backer. We have regular free fly events where even people who aren't backers can check out the game. So tell us a little bit about what's involved in actually running a game like Star Citizen today.
Almost everything we use to serve the game or the platform to the players is run on public clouds. And that had been almost always the case as far as I know. And we have been trying different public clouds to see the perfect offering for what we need for the long term and also the short term. However, I believe IT under Mike Jones had been running our own internal clouds here as well. So we still utilize the cloud technology, whether it's public or private, on hardware owned by us.
The main thing that Ahmed's talking about is where do we put the servers? And the server, or the services that we connect to when we play Star Citizen, could be anywhere. It's really just a computer on the internet. So we could host that here on our own servers. This is the way we used to do it in the old days. The problem with that model is that first you have to acquire a lot of servers, and that's a pretty big expense, whereas with the cloud or hosted rental market, we can only rent or buy what we need, and then we can turn it off and stop paying for it if we're not using it. With dedicated hardware, we have a massive overhead in maintaining that equipment, whereas if we're using someone else's, we don't have to worry so much about that. If a fan goes out or a CPU or a power supply goes out in a virtual environment, these systems are designed to automatically roll over to the next available machine. So this gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility at a much lower price point than if we had to acquire everything ourselves. One of the things that I think is really important to point out, and I hope that Ahmed can explain to you, is the additional flexibility we get in the network. If we just hosted here, let's say in Austin or at any of our studios, the players would be connecting to that one place. What we can do now by utilizing servers located throughout the world is that we could put servers anywhere we need them, wherever the players are, if that makes sense to do.
Ahmed, do you want to tell us a little bit more about the services that actually comprise Star Citizen today?
Absolutely. So the game itself needs, any client that any player has needs another component, the DGS, the dedicated game server. We always call it DGS. However, you cannot have this connection between the player and the dedicated game server that he wants to play with unless you have a lot of back-end services taking care of a lot of business logic that the player needs. For example, the player needs to be able to declare his request, what game he wants to play. He wants to say that he wants to play with his friends, communicate with them, chat with them. And these are the services that are being developed here in Austin by our back-end services team, Jason Ely and Tom Sawyer. Currently what we have our layout or our VM mainly fall in three main types. We have a hub server or a hub VM, and a core VM, and a game VM. The game VM is just a virtual machine that we acquire from our public cloud provider. In our current case, it's EC2. And you would load it with DGS instances according to that amount of load that we decided on, how many instances would run on how many CPU, how much memory, how much network. And they all get connected to the core services. The core box would have several services. Most importantly, we have GEM, the General Instance Manager. A lot of backers already are familiar with the name and know what it does. And we have the P-cache, persistence cache. Persistence cache sits before the persistence database service that writes directly to the database, taking all the traffic from all the dedicated game servers and pushing it down to the database in more of a queued, organized manner rather than having all the game servers hammering one single service. The current model that we have, we can have as many hubs as we need. We can have as many game servers as we need, but we have only one singleton of every one of these services. But that's the current model. Because usually, during my experience in the startups, you go out with proofing your concept, then having your MVP, minimum viable product, make sure that's what you need, and then you start moving from there. So currently, the backend service team are working on revamping and redesigning all these singletons into so many stateless, easy to scale services that we can have whatever we want and cope with whatever load we get. And that's the main point that we are in the cloud. One of the main great things about being in the cloud is being able to scale whenever we want. Back in the days when you were trying to market the clouds, you always used to bring up the examples from the Black Friday. You have a shop that sells like flour or sells toys. Year round, you can be fine by running one single VM. On Black Friday, you need 200. That's when you go to the cloud. And we have the same concept because we need to be always able to provide resources and game servers for the players to play, no matter how many of them decided to play, no matter where they are.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about how we've added functionality or added features over time and sort of where that gets us today? And I'm particularly interested in understanding from your experience, like the level of complexity that we have in Star Citizen today already compared to a lot of other games.
Well, one way I like to describe that is in a physical way that you can kind of visualize. When we were developing the hangar module, of course we had fewer people, and everything that we did as a company came together in one computer, a tall one, but it was not a very big computer, and it sat under one guy's desk, and we got one build a day. The needs of the publishing increased so rapidly that this one computer wasn't going to be enough. And when we took a look at this, we realized we would need a room full of computers to do this. So this is what Ahmed talks about when we developed our own internal cloud. So we've built a virtualization infrastructure where we can actually expand, much in the same way the game servers run. We expand a internal build system that increases dynamically based on the needs.
Tell me about what you've been working on lately. This is a major new feature that all of this infrastructure and architecture that we've talked about has gone through multiple generations and iterations and really set us up for something that you've been working on now with other engineers. Tell us about it.
So since December, we started looking at, we released Star Marine. And now we have a lot of players who want to play FPS. And a lot of players have been asking us, what is the multi-region work? Where can we be able to play in servers closer to us? So we all agree that this is the right moment. We have an FPS right now, so let's have multi-regions. So since December, and including January, and maybe a little bit of February, we have been working in the multi-region servers to be able to have servers in as many regions as we want, without the player having the disconnect that he has to move from a region to another, because you all share the single database. So the same player can play in EU, and then a few minutes later can switch and go back and play in the US, and he'll find the same information that he needs. As any new feature we come out with, as I was just explaining, we try to come out with a certain delivery between a POC, a proof concept, and an MVP, a minimum viable product, and that's what we have right now. And I believe we have selection for the regions that we will start with, and we have been building or editing our automation tools, Salt Stack, to be able to cope with different regions, different naming, different availability zones, which is a concept that happened inside AWS, and how we can add resilience while we are adding availability at the same time. So we always know if something went down over here, we'll have a replacement for it over there, but also we are trying to get as closer as we can to our player base. Currently, I believe we will start rolling out, we have our current region in Virginia, North Virginia, US East one, and we will be adding Frankfurt, and we will be adding Sydney. And it's been a lot of fun. Just every single minute that was spent in this project, connecting these regions together, making sure that everything worked correctly, it was kind of different than any other changes that we did, because we know that this will really enhance the player experience. We know that players will feel that. There's a lot of work that we get to do, but you're like, we just did something really cool, but players won't really get to notice it. But this one, we really hope that they notice it, they like it, and we can embrace it and expand on it too.
One thing I know about the multi-region work is that there's really two levels to this experience from the player's perspective of playing in a different region or being able to choose a region. One piece of it is where the game server is located, and this is the DGS that you talked about. And the other piece, which is invisible to the player, is where the hub server is located.
Yes.
And so my understanding is that as we roll out to these different regions, that players will always connect to the hub server that's closest to them.
Absolutely.
Which gets them into our network at that point, instead of just going over the open internet. And then from there, they can play on a dedicated game server that's either located in that same region, or the DGS may be located in another region.
Correct. So the way the feature is going to roll out, utilizing the technology of using a new extension in DNS that would allow the DNS server to know a little bit more about the location of the requester, we would be able, using a service like Route 53, to send players to the closest load balancer to them, and from the load balancer it would take it to the most suitable hub server they have. The moment you get in this hub, you will get marked with a region ID. That's the region ID you walked in with, and the matchmaker will respect that choice. You came from region ID, that means Europe, then you're going to get sent to a game server in Europe. You want to go play with your friends, then make your selection and go play in the US. So hopefully this will be rolled out real soon, and players will enjoy it, and we will expand on it and listen to all their feedback and try to make it much better.
Yeah.
Ahmed makes it sound so simple.
I know, right? It makes perfect sense, right?
We've been working on this for some time, and it has been a fun project, but there is a tremendous amount of network engineering and network security that goes into this, and also performance tuning that has to be considered for this to work.
I mean, you said a minute ago, well, we worked on this in December and January, but it's also the case that if it wasn't for, the 18 months of work that came before that, that you couldn't do this in 2 months, right?
Absolutely. And that's when experience kicks in, and that's how you learn the hard lessons from before. You have to plan everything ahead. You have to make sure that you have areas where you can expand, and don't get surprised that you're going to leave the current region that you work in. And if you want to talk a little bit technical, AWS, the largest organizational body they have is called VPC, Virtual Private Cloud. And the Virtual Private Cloud cannot go across regions. So you cannot have one single VPC, which is a cloud, and by the cloud meaning it follows one single network CIDR, like it's a single internal network that you can divide in between, but you cannot really make a VPC have the same existence, the same IP address, subnet, or the same networking between two different regions. So you have to make sure that you make your own tunnels, and you have to make sure that your VPCs were aligned correctly. They're not going to collide. You will get to know who's coming from what, who needs to what. Not any other traffic will get in the way, and also be able to recover. Because definitely, while you're being in the cloud, such a great thing, it's an amazing thing, but always designed for failure. Everything will fail. You have neighbors, you have a lot of very complicated stack beneath you to know what's going on. As Mike was explaining, the disks might go bad or anything could happen. So we have been working in that to make sure that even if we lost our tunnels, we can recover in a few minutes from alert on it, and make sure that we are delivering the traffic needed from the distant game servers to the core service that runs the matchmaking or database and all of that, with the best achieved latency and the most attainable bandwidth that we can attain between these different regions. And I think we started kind of like with a big stretch. We're going to Sydney, we're going from Virginia to Sydney, and we're going to Frankfurt. Frankfurt is actually central in Europe. When you look at it, we could have one in Ireland. That makes it a little bit easier for us. But we said, okay, let's do it. So we're going to Sydney with Frankfurt and Virginia for the first rollout. And all the networks are laid out. We are ready to expand. I believe there are 14 or 15. We are ready to expand in every single region in AWS whenever we feel we need to.
Well, that's perfect for my last question, which is to say, where are you going from here? Like, what do you see on the roadmap after this? And what does this set you up for? And what can we expect to see in the future?
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to multi-region, I'm not sure if I can state them all. I think I can. They have Ohio, Oregon, California, Ireland, London, Sydney, Mumbai, Sao Paulo, Brazil, I believe Tokyo, Japan, Seoul, Korea. So yeah, sky's the limit. And they keep adding more regions. I believe they're going to have a new region in France and one more in China soon. So as you mentioned, the way it works, because we are here to build this project, we always try to lay our foundation. And with the support that we get from you and we get from Mike, that we can take our time to build our own foundations and tech so we can capitalize on it in the future and be able to roll quick features. That's what we have been doing. Right now, going to any region is not going to be any limit to us. And once we are done with the region, this year is going to be a little bit busy for us, because we have a lot of, as much as we were talking about how the back-end services started with having a proof of concept and then moved to an MVP, and these are going to get revamped, we have a lot of infrastructure elements that we need to look at. We have a lot of areas where we monitor certain aspects. We need to group some of them. We need to diverse some of them. We need to be able to look more about log aggregation solutions, how we can scale it out. Because the way we look at it, we need to be ready to have 10,000 VMs reporting at the same time without crippling us. And that's the price that's the reward that we get from having a DevOps department early on. I hope this answers the question.
Yeah.
Every year we say the same thing, but this one really feels like we're making some big headway. The automation systems are done now. We feel like we can scale with a very high reliability. We have far fewer panic nights where we're staying up all night trying to solve problems. So definitely the work that we've put in has paid great dividends. And so now with this expansion into multi-regions, that just gives us more that we can do.
Cool. Well, I'm really proud of the work that you and your teams have accomplished, and I'm really happy that we have a chance to share this in more detail with our fans, and I look forward to all the great things that are yet to come.
Yep.
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
for the
guys.
time.
Really happy we got to take a deeper look at the team. They're often the unsung heroes of the project because what they do is critical to making Star Citizen work, but it's not as sexy as building a spaceship or making an environment or a character. And there's been a ton of effort put into implementing the multi-regional servers and some of that back-end matchmaking. So it's great that we got to highlight some of that work.
It is. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of ATV. As always, we'd like to thank our subscribers for contributing to all of our behind-the-scenes content.
Yep, thank you guys. And I'd also like to express our continued thanks to all our backers out there who do so much to support Star Citizen's development. We're trying to do something unique with this project, and all of you are a large part of that.
Yes, you are. We'd also like to invite you all to join us tomorrow at 12 Pacific for the latest Star Citizen Happy Hour stream to watch some live gameplay and discussion.
Yes, so this week, Senior Writer Will Weisbaum will be stopping by to answer some questions. It should be a great way to kick off your weekend.
And do you know what else might make their weekend even better?
Let me guess. A brand new look at what our artists have been doing with the MISC Prospector?
Woohoo, yes. Exactly what I was thinking. Enjoy, and we will see you
around the verse. Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.